Meow meow. Guys, I don't know why my mic is crackling. I really don't know. All I know is meow meow. It's really crackling, I don't know why.
If there's nothing better to do, we could go foraging for ingredients.
It's freaking crackling. I don't like it.
Drop your weapons!
At the frying pan!
You're in for a little shock. Final warning!
Nice and spicy!
Freak this crackling.
Surrender.
Stop right there! Hands rushing! You're toast!
Come a little closer. Blitz.
Boba, get them!
Drop your weapons!
At the frying pan!
Off we go! Let's light it up! Adventure, I'm going in!
Nice and spicy! Stop right there! At the frying pan!
Let's spark the
Final warning! Boba, get them!
Let's light it up!
Nice and spicy!
Drop your weapons! You asked for it! Teamwork is dreamwork!
Eat this!
right there! Let's light it up!
Try not to enjoy this.
It's really crackling. I hate this. But
You're in for a little shock. You've been a naughty boy.
Drop your weapons! Let's light it up! Everybody stand back! Hands where I can see them!
Booba, get them!
Don't be such a brute.
You're toast!
Stop right there! Let out! Why do they never miss?
Let's spark things up a little.
Teamwork is dreamwork! Let's light it up!
Nice and spicy!
Blitz.
Drop your weapons!
Eat this!
You asked for it! Let's light it up! Final warning! Everybody stand back!
At the right!
Try not to.
Off we go! Let's light it up!
That really hurt! Booba, get them!
Stop right there! I'm going in!
Nice and spicy!
Adventure time!
Come a little closer.
Let's light it up! Hands where I can see!
You're toast!
Don't be such a brute. Let's spark.
Everybody stand back!
Booba, get them!
Stop right there! I'm going in! Why do they never miss? You asked for it! Final warning!
Eat this!
I'm actually just rushing. Wonder what this crackling is.
Ad Astra Abyss.
Haven't you heard?
Hindi nga isara play. Meow, 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 meow. There, it's finally fixed, lol. Man, you can really hear the crackling.
Let's roll.
meow. Meow meow.
Incendiary! Incendiary out! Throwing grenade! Deploying flashbang.
Meow meow.
Let's make this right as rain. Gear up. We aren't going on a windy walk here.
Meow meow meow.
Grenade out.
Hee. It's a planting.
Bomb has been planted.
Freak.
Terrorists win.
Sticking out your yard for the wrestler.
Move!
Meow meow meow.
Deploying decoy. Throwing fire. Fire in the hole. let's go, let's go!
Meow, meow, meow.
There's no stopping us. Let's go. Smoke. Laying down smoke. Deploying flashbang. Throwing flashbang. Decoys out. Grenade out. Incendiary out. Grenade. Bomb has been planted.
Hey, hey,
Yes.
hey, Paul.
Hey, hey. There's nothing else I can say. Hey, hey.
Smoke. Diffusing. Counter-terrorists win. I am fired up. Move it, move it. Flashbang. Bomb has been planted. Throwing grenade. Incendiary. Decoy.
I don't have a kit. Sorry.
Terrorists win. Move it! Flashbang. Decoy. Counter-terrorists win. Really landed in a... Let's show them who we are. Throwing smoke. Deploying flashbang. Grenade out. Incendiary out. Grenade out. Smoke. Deploying decoy. Grenade out. Incendiary.
The freak.
Bomb has been planted. Let's have it, lads. Decoys out.
Bomb has been planted. Terrorists win.
Come on, chop chop. Deploying flashbang. Laying down smoke.
Counter to win.
I like this. This is what we have been working for. Let's go, my brothers. Decoy. I'm planting.
Bomb has been planted. Terrorists win.
Together we can do this. Throwing a decoy. Flashbang.
Come on, man.
Activating the bomb.
Bomb has been planted.
Throwing smoke.
Terrorists win.
You think you can kill us?
Counter-terrorists win.
We must work together. Decoys out. I'm throwing a flashbang.
Bomb has been defused. Counter-terrorists win.
Now is the time. Throw the decoy. I'm throwing smoke. Grenade out. I'm planted.
Bomb has been planted.
Throwing smoke.
你他妈的有火，你他妈的有烟，你他妈认你妈个逼火！我操，跟你妈个脑瘫一样啊！脑子里面装的全是屎是吗？
Terrorists win.
妈了个傻逼外国人，跟你妈的吃屎一样！
Let's go. Decoy. Smoke. I'm throwing a grenade. Throwing fire.
Counter-terrorists win.
怎么？有事啊？给我发把枪来试试。
Guys, I told you, we kill them all.
发枪啊！你有这么多钱，要烧给你妈！
Decoys out. Flashbang.
Last one, A side.
Activating the bomb.
Bomb has been planted. Terrorists win.
I fear no man. Now is the time.
Okay.
Throwing a decoy. I'm throwing a flashback. Grenade. Throwing fire. Grenade out. I'm throwing smoke.
Counter-terrorists win.
Forward. Decoy out. Flashback. Throwing bomb. Bomb.
Enjoy the same great Cadbury taste. 8 pesos SRP lang. Nasa sari-sari stores na.
Hi, Steve from Cool Riffs Guitar School, and today we're going to be having a look at the Mua PE100. It's a portable guitar effects processor, and it comes in at only £65 in the UK, so it is really inexpensive. It is made for people who want to be doing more so practicing. It's an ideal unit for that. I might not be using it for recording, but I'd certainly find it a really useful piece of equipment for practicing. It's got 99 factory presets in them, and it's got 99 user presets in it. Okay, 7 amp models, 4 reverb types, 5 different delays, 5 different types of delay, 11 modulation effects, 10 overdrive and distortion effects, and it also has, as you can see it flashing on and off, tap tempo functionality, which is really useful, especially as it has a 40 drum pattern, little drum machine inside it, so you can actually slow it down and speed it up, and using the tap tempo if you wish, or you can manually do it using the controller on the top. What else has it got on it? It's got 4 quick recall preset slots on option per. Okay, so let's have a quick create these. It's got a nice kind of chorus effect when they created. I think it's mixed. DS I think stands for distortion, and I think it's mixed with a Fender type of amp. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got this kind of nice kind of sound. Which is kind of cool. You could solo with it. What does it sound like when I turn the volume down? A little bit. Let's have a listen. Yeah. What's it called? big hair. I wish I had big
I think that's Big Muff.
hair now. Not so much anymore, anyway. This is your typical rocky kind of sound. It's quite high gain. Good finger tapping. So we've got those kind of sounds. Shall we have a listen to the drum machine? I think so. I think it's a good idea. Okay, let's have a listen to it with a bit of a rocky sound on. And all I need to do is just press the rhythm button. The sounds within it, more tweaking, you use mode. It comes onto the, or you do that. So if you want, you can see that we've got all these different, yeah, it's going to take me down rhythm, different drum. What I'm going to do, I can, from the system setting, I'm just going to go to the
Let's roll. Let's go, my brother.
Meow meow. Orange.
Activating the bump.
Bomb has been planted.
Throwing fire. Grenade.
Come on. I got two of them.
Terrorists win.
Now is the time. Fog. Throwing a decoy. brothers. Decoys out. I'm throwing smoke. Grenade out. Molotov.
Counter-terrorists win.
Move it, move it. Throw the flashbang. Flashbang. Smoke. I'm throwing a grenade. Throwing fire. Decoys out.
Counter-terrorists win.
Together we can do this. Decoy. Smoke. Molotov. I'm throwing a grenade. I'm throwing smoke. Planted.
Bomb has been planted. Bomb has been defused. Counter-terrorists win.
Let's go.
Bomb has been defused. Counter-terrorists win.
Introducing a new skincare experience. Lactacid Body Wash Healthy Bright. Powered by Lactobiome Plus, Actapone, and Niacinamide. So skin sings fair and radiant. Lactacid Body Wash.
The all-new Jollibee app. Mas madali nang mag-order ng Jollibee favorites mo. Download now!
Today we're going to go ahead and go over how to hook these up in parallel first. Then after we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and move on, and I'll show you how to connect them in series and upgrade your system to 24 volts. So the first thing you want to do is you don't want to just connect these. This stuff.
The all-new Jollibee app. Mas madali nang mag-order ng Jollibee favorites mo. Download now!
Basta di sigurado. Sa shopping mall, guaranteed authentic. Sigurado sa shopping mall!
Good evening and welcome back to Cruising.
Mix it up, pair it up with Burger King made for 89. King Feast for me. With Burger King's King Feast for me.
Good evening and welcome back to Cruising Off Duty. I am Craig. Well, if you saw in the last episode, you know I just reviewed the Redodo 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. It scored very well in that episode. You'll know that it went over the 100 amp hour rating in terms of how much it can give out. I have also got the 200 amp hour that I've owned for over a year myself as my house battery on my boat, and it does excellent. I just wanted to do this little additional video. We were talking about maybe you take this, maybe you take just one of these on the road through a cigarette adapter. So they give you a cord. This cord is at the same time. So let's get on to the bigger Blue Eddy. So the Blue Eddy battery bank, but instead of 100 amp hour, you would have 400 amp hours. So with 4 batteries at 1280 watt hours, you're getting 5,000.
Counter-terrorists win.
They shall regret this day. Throw it as a guy.
sinisipon, mag-Joseph Z+. Mas galing para balik saya din.
Yung kanyang pure sine wave output.
One shift later.
Ito yung kanyang inductor filter. So, maraming nagre-request ng teardown video ni Yubao EM300 watts. Kahit na maraming video na dito sa YouTube na teardown ng ganito, so gagawan pa rin natin kasi nga request ninyo. Okay, harap at likod, ganun lang. Tapos, siya, or matanggal yung laman sa loob niya, baka sakaling, or baka madisgrasya tayo. Ayun o, may laman pa. Baka umandar kasi bigla tayo makuryente. Okay, check muna natin yung kanyang inverter. Nakalak pa rin. Ayun. Kala mo natanggal or nabitak. Ito nakakatakot sa mga ganito. Para siyang masisira. Ayun. Nandito yung kanyang blower. So, ang nakadesign sa kanya, pang dalawang blower kasi dalawa yung connection dito. Ayun, tanggal. Ha? Ang galing! Pabalik ka ba talaga o hindi? Hello? Na-disgrasya kanina guys na namasyal yung isang wire. Di ko alam kung positive or negative dito sa linya dito. So hindi ko alam kasi nga may uminit dito. Hindi ko alam kung may na-damage. So tingnan natin kung may problema. Sa AC muna kasi yung importanteng bagay. Ayan, okay. Tapos yung kanyang waveform kung walang problema. Ayun, walang problema. Tapos yung sa kanyang
AC.
mga DC outputs.
I think, yeah, if I remember correctly, DC is gonna be a straight line.
Okay naman sa flashlight. Okay naman. Ay, nako. Kinabahan ako doon. At isa pang napansin ko dito guys, yung kanyang wire, yung balat niya parang ano, heat resistant or silicone. So subukan natin kung masusunog siya. Try muna natin sa ibang mga wire. Ito guys, yung ordinary wire. Tingnan natin. Yun o, sunog o. Subukan natin dito. Parang ano, parang. Subukan natin. Ayun o, hindi siya masusunog o. Para makita nyo. Okay, focus natin sa wire. Hindi siya nasusunog. Ayan o, walang damage. Subok natin sa wire na isa. Ayan o. Dito, wala, nakakatakot yung wire. Baka sumahid ka naman. Tapos yung mga maliliit, ganun din. Basta yung mga ano, nagdadala ng mabibigat na load. Silicone yung balat niya. Pero ito, ayun, ordinary. So yung mga nagdadala ng ano, mabibigat na load, yun yung ano, silicone yung balat. Eto, subukan natin dito. Ayun, hindi. Ordinary. So ito yung kanyang inverter guys, na pure sine wave. Ito yung kanyang input, yung kanyang DC-DC converter. Tapos ito naman yung AC, yung kanyang pure sine wave output. Ito yung kanyang inductor filter na sinasabi ko eh.
Ang galing! Ang galing!
Man, this guy's gonna have an accident.
Incendiary out. Deploying decoy.
na. Sunog na. I-check natin kung may trouble kasi nga ganun na naman. Uminit na naman tong wire na to guys, oh. Mainit. So hindi naman nasunog yung mismong wire, uminit siya, hindi nasunog yung balat niya. So ngayon, i-check natin kung sira yung kanyang inverter. Dahil kung sira, di na natin itutuloy itong video. Malamang yung diode yung ano yan, nariread niya. Tingnan natin kung sira yung fuse. Okay naman yung fuse. So ngayon, i-check natin ulit. I-check natin ulit. Ano ba yan? Ilang beses ng ganon. Ito palang sigurang teardown na ano. Grabeng nadidisgrasya ko. Light to 4 pa naman yung battery niya. Lahat-lahat patay natin sa kanyang DC out yung kanyang inverter. Ito, nasa flashlight. Ayan. Okay, so yan guys, nakita na natin ang loob niya. Next time siguro i-compare natin sa ibang brand. Okay, so maraming salamat sa inyong panonood sa video na to. Next time ulit, kita-kita.
Maybe I'll go back to Warhammer some other time.
Papa. Have you ever wondered why dumb people make more money than you? How do people like Kim Kardashian or TikTokers make millions of dollars doing nothing while you're busy grinding away at work? In today's video, I'm sharing 3 reasons why dumb people make more money than you and 3 things you can do today to get ahead financially. So I grew up thinking that you had to be smart to get rich. But in retrospect, if that was true, then every PhD candidate would have a private jet and Richard Branson, who dropped out of school at 15, would be working at 7-Eleven. But the reality is, the wealthiest people in the world aren't necessarily smarter than you or me. For example, the average college GPA for the average millionaire in the US is 2.9 out of 5, which isn't failing, but pretty damn close to it. And research shows that those who earn the most money actually scored lower on intelligence than those who earned less than them. Meaning getting rich nowadays isn't about being smart, and instead it comes down to these three things. Number one, have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? It's a psychological bias where people who know very little about a subject often think that they know more than they do. So if you think about it, do you consider yourself an above average driver? I bet you tree 50 that you said yes, and studies show exactly that, right? 93% of Americans rate themselves as better than average at driving, which is statistically impossible. We can't all be above average at driving, but that's basically the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. Our brain works very hard to convince ourselves that we are more competent than we are. And the irony is that the more quote-unquote dumb someone is, the more they think they can succeed in what they do. You get more confident, and then all of a sudden you think you can start a YouTube channel about personal finance, grow it into a media business helping millions of people every month make smarter money moves, and before you know it, you're doing it. That's me. On the other hand, for most smart people, the moment you even consider starting a big endeavor like this, you're gonna start researching, right? With 316 tabs open where you try to analyze every possible approach for weeks, and then you never actually start anything, aka analysis paralysis. And it happens when you spend too much time thinking about doing something, which just paralyzes you from making actual progress in doing that thing. The point is, dumb people often don't know what they don't know, so they get more confident and they believe in themselves, right? That they can actually succeed, so they actually start and take the first step. But most people, they wanna make sure that they have all the information first, right? They wanna have the best strategy and the best plan, and then they overthink and they second guess themselves and end up not doing anything. Which brings me to the second reason that prevents smart people from getting rich, and it's that you have the wrong understanding of risk. And this is something that I've seen firsthand because I kind of lived on both sides. My first job out of college was in finance, and I'd say 90% of my coworkers, right? 90% of them went to Ivy League colleges, they were top of their class, they were very academically smart people. And whenever we talked about how much our job sucked or how much we hated them, and then we would like plan when we'll quit and start our own company, nearly all of them would agree with me and they'd say, yeah, I'm down. And then we spend hours talking about entrepreneurship and our business ideas and yada yada. And this isn't like a one-time conversation, right? This would span across multiple weeks. And what really blows my mind is that I will check in again with them later, like a month or 2 months later, and then I'll find out that they haven't done anything to try and reach their goals, despite all the conversations we literally just had. And now that I've been in this entrepreneurship space for a few years now and meeting really cool people, ranging from someone just starting a new business to someone who raised tens of millions of dollars, I would always notice that a lot of them either never went to college, or if they did, they went to less well-known schools. And it's not just my experience. Research actually found that people with higher cognitive scores were more willing to take risk in a controlled environment, but when real money was involved and was
Hold on, guys, hold on. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got back. Sorry, man. I'm gonna put the live chat on, okay? Hold on.
On the line, that boldness pretty much disappeared. And if you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. Because like back in the day, and when we were hunters and gatherers in the wild, it was the smart people who were the ones that survived, right? If you heard some noise in the bushes, in the grass, it was the smart hunters who would be like, oh shit, that's scary AF, let's get out of here. Whereas it was the less than smart hunters who decided to stay and get eaten alive. So over time, the people who survived were people who overestimated their risk and kind of imagined the worst case scenario. And if we fast forward to modern times, right, the smart people are still instinctually conditioned to take on fewer risk and kind of follow the safe traditional path. But the difference is nowadays, taking on a risk that isn't like illegal isn't that serious, right? Maybe you'll lose some money, maybe you'll lose some time, but you're not gonna die, you're not gonna get eaten by a lion. But still, the fear of some risk is enough for most smart people to kind of stay on the safe path. The point is, dumb people tend to underestimate the risk, whereas smart people tend to overestimate it and then follow the conventional route. But if you want to get rich, you can't follow conventional wisdom and expect to get non-conventional results. Which is why today's sponsor, Relay, has been such a game changer. Relay is the business banking platform that actually understands how small businesses work. You see, a lot of conventional and traditional banking accounts, they charge you high fees or they require minimum balances just for you to bank with them. But like, why are we paying to use our own money? With Relay, there are no hidden fees, no overdraft fees, and no minimum balance requirements, so you never have to worry or second guess. No more, oh crap, did I leave enough money in the account? And one of the coolest things, if you ever wanted to separate your money into different buckets for like savings, payrolls, taxes, or a top secret project that you've been procrastinating on, Relay lets you set up to 20 checking accounts so you have a place for every dollar. And it's not just accounts. If you have a team, Relay lets you issue up to 50 physical or virtual debit cards that you can set spending limits on and even lock people out if someone decides they want to eat 100 pineapple pizzas late Friday night on the company's dollar. So if you're interested in better business banking, check out Relay with the link in the description below. The next reason why dumb people make more money than you is that smart people are scared of looking stupid. And this is something I've noticed actually happens a lot for people who go through life being labeled the smart kid. Growing up for me, I was never considered the smart kid in my class, but I had a lot of smart friends, probably because I looked like I was a smart nerd, but that was a catfish. People who grow up being the smart kid, they get a lot of external validation from it, right? And it kind of becomes this new identity. And when your self-image is built on being intelligent or being always right, then the thought of starting a business and failing publicly is kind of scary and is in a way pretty much just all downhill. In fact, studies show that kids who were praised for being smart were more likely to avoid challenging tasks because they were afraid of failing, which is kind of ironic because if you're smart, you should always want to improve as a person, and you don't really get better when things are easy. It's basically like when you're lifting weights, right? If you lift a half a pound dumbbell, you can move your arm up and down as much as you want, but you're not actually gonna build any new muscle. On the other hand, people who didn't grow up being the smart kid in class, like me, I was pretty average, you don't carry this type of baggage and burden around. And people tend to underestimate and think that you're never going to achieve much anyway. And this does two very interesting things, right? So number one, it kind of motivates you because it makes you want to prove everyone else wrong. And number two, you technically have less to prove and less to lose, so it's all upside from here. So, keeping all these reasons in mind, right? What are some things you can do if you're smart and you want to get rich and not get left behind? Number one is you need to embrace a B+ mentality. Let's say there are two people at the bottom of a mountain, right? A smart person and a dumb person. Before taking even a single step, the smart person is gonna sit down, take out a map, weather instruments, climbing manuals, the whole shebang. Meanwhile, the dumb person is just gonna start climbing, right? Maybe he goes the wrong way. Maybe he's gonna make a mistake. Maybe he slips a few times. But every time he messes up, he's gonna get back up and he's gonna keep on going. At the end, even though the dumb person messed up a lot, right? He's the first one to make it to the top. While the smart person is still at the bottom, making sure he's wearing the right hiking boots. If you want to get rich, you need to stop trying to always do A+ work and be okay with doing B+ work. Mistakes are a part of life, and oftentimes they are the best ways to learn something, right? And to be honest, there's a really solid chance that what you consider B+ work is actually pretty damn good already. Very quick, 3 books that I found really helpful for me when I'm in a slump or when I'm in analysis paralysis is The Practice, Show Your Work, and Getting Things Done. The point is, at some point, perfection is just another fancy word for procrastination, right? You don't get any better by thinking about doing something, you get better by doing it. And each imperfect action that you take teaches you something that you couldn't have learned otherwise, right? And all these like small improvements eventually compound into expertise and success. Number 2, find and use your comparative advantage. Now, I know this is going in a little bit of a different direction, but the truth is, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. What I've noticed is that it takes a very specific personality, but that still doesn't mean that you can't get rich not being an entrepreneur. Part of financial success is finding out what you can do better than the average person or better than most people and really focusing on doing that thing. For example, a really talented plumber who's well known throughout the city, right? He can earn way more money than a lawyer who is terrible at his job. And sometimes it can be really tough to find out what you're good at if you've been doing something else for a very long time. But the easiest way to find that out is, one, you can check out Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment or VIA's Character Strength Assessment. Both of these assessments are pretty comprehensive and the results are pretty eye-opening. The point is, if you go down a career path that doesn't align with your strengths and you do it just because you feel like you're supposed to do it, because of prestige, of stability or money, then you're going to underperform compared to other people and you're never going to reach your full potential. The next tip is to avoid the heavier weight. And this is something that really helped me make the leap from corporate America to starting my own business. And it's realizing that no matter which of the 2 choices I made, right, it's gonna suck. For example, I hated my job, right? And I felt like I was going nowhere. And if I stayed, then I would experience the pain of staying where I was. On the other hand, if I left and I did my own thing, right, I would experience the pain of going into the unknown and potentially failing and looking stupid or getting judged from my friends and family. So I had 2 choices, and either choice would lead to some sort of pain. So how did I figure out which choice to choose? For me, what I did is I tried to imagine my life in 5, 10, 15 years from now and look at it and see which pain would hurt the most. And I realized that the pain of staying where I was and not doing anything, that pain was would be far greater for me than if I forced myself to get out of my comfort zone and take the jump. The point is, even if you have the tiniest inkling of wanting to do more, give it a try. Because the absolute worst thing that can happen is you fail and then you end up in the same exact spot that you are in right now.
Hide and sneak! Hot, have tail sweats.
Today we're going to talk
Yeah, that's true. This is so true. I've done this.
about rumination. When I was a third-year psychiatry resident, I had a group of patients that came into my office with a couple of different diagnoses. One person had a mood disorder, one person had an anxiety disorder, and one person had PTSD. And so as I started working with them, I started doing psychotherapy because that's what a third-year resident is supposed to do. I had a wonderful supervisor, so I started therapizing them, right? So we worked a lot on their emotions, emotional processing, things like journaling, doing things like thought logs that look at the relationship between their thoughts, their actions, and their behaviors. But despite doing all of this emotional work, they didn't seem to be getting better. And when I was sitting in the room with them, it just sort of felt to me like their minds were out of their control. No matter how much we talk about how hurt they feel, their mind would start spiraling in some kind of direction. So I started doing something a little bit unorthodox. I sort of looked at this and I sort of said, okay, like this mind is going way off track. They get stuck in these cycles of repetitive thinking. Let's just learn how to shut off the mind. So I started teaching them more stuff from like yoga and meditative traditions, and then something kind of funny happened. So then I got called into my program director's office one day, and she asked me like, so how are things going with this set of patients? How are things going with the supervisor? And I said, honestly, like things seem a little bit hard. You know, I'm trying to do psychotherapy with them. It doesn't seem very effective. I'm teaching them some like yoga and meditation techniques. Those seem to be working like, okay, I'm not quite sure. And that's when she informs me that the supervisor that I'm working with is essentially firing me. She says that the supervisor that you're working with feels like she can't work with you anymore. And I was like really shocked, and I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, you know, why? Like, I was a bit confused. And she said, well, like, you know, the supervisor says that you're sitting with these patients and you're doing something, but it's not psychotherapy. And she's a psychotherapy supervisor, so she can't like guide you in something unless you're willing to like do that thing. So thankfully it turned out to be totally fine. I don't think the supervisor made a mistake or anything. In fact, I think it was a really, really pro move on her part. She recognized that I was doing something that has value and that I probably needed a different kind of guidance to learn psychotherapy and sort of blend these two things, and that was awesome. It worked out great. A lot of the stuff that I ended up doing with my patients was actually pretty effective. And a lot of that stuff is like when we think about something like rumination or depression or anxiety, we don't really think about how can I control the mind itself, or how can I put my mind in how can I put my brain in a physiologic state where we are less likely to ruminate. So if you guys want info like that, check out Dr. K's guide. We have a ton of great techniques in there about sort of shaping your brain, shaping your body, and shaping your mind. And what I didn't realize at the time is that these were patients who were ruminators. These are patients who repetitively think about something over and over and over again. It's almost as if their mind is turned against them. And the really shocking thing about rumination is we may think, okay, like if your mind gets caught in thought loops or spirals, like you should go see a therapist. But actually, it turns out that if you are someone who ruminates, therapy is less likely to be effective for you. So this was first demonstrated in a large-scale longitudinal studies in which rumination prospectively predicted the onset of major depressive episodes and depressive symptoms in non-depressed and currently depressed individuals across follow-up periods ranging from 6 weeks to 5 years. So what this means is that if you're a ruminator, the degree of rumination predicts the onset of depression. But it's not just depression. Large-scale prospective longitudinal studies, that means that studying things prospectively, right? So we're not doing like a retrospective data analysis, found that rumination predicted subsequent substance use, eating disorders, alcohol abuse, and PTSD symptoms following trauma, even after controlling for initial symptoms. So this is kind of shocking because what these studies show is that if you have a traumatic event, if you are someone who ruminates, the likelihood for that traumatic event to turn into PTSD is correlated with your rumination. So not only does rumination increase your risk for all kinds of mental disorders, but it actually interferes with treatment. So it turns out that as a PGY3, what I didn't realize is it's not that I was doing psychotherapy incorrectly. It's that if you're someone who ruminates, there's a good chance that psychotherapy won't be as effective for you. Indeed, there is growing evidence that elevated rumination at the start of treatment predicts poorer outcomes to cognitive behavioral therapy for depression, such as increased time to remission and reduced likelihood of achieving remission. Rumination at the end of mindfulness CBT treatment predicts a depressive relapse. So that means that when you complete a course of treatment, if you're a ruminator, that increases the risk that your depression will actually relapse and you'll get depressed again. For patients receiving brief CBT in a partial hospitalization program, so these are people who have intensive care, right? They're receiving intensive care. Baseline rumination predicted subsequent anxiety and depression, and the examination of symptom trajectories indicated that when rumination did not improve, symptoms of depression and anxiety did not improve and were likely to worsen over time. So this is crazy, right? This means that if you are someone who ruminates and you go to treatment, and you do not target the rumination specifically, this will reduce the efficacy of treatment, and in some studies may even predict worsening depression and anxiety despite the fact that you did the treatment. So how is it that rumination interferes with treatment of psychotherapy, and why is it that rumination predicts the propensity for depressive relapse, symptoms of anxiety, for a trauma to turn into PTSD. How does this actually happen? So the first problem with rumination is that it is an emotional magnifier. The first negative effect of rumination found in experimental studies is that it exacerbates and prolongs existing emotional states such as sadness, anger, anxiety, and depression. Okay? And in parallel, it elaborates and further polarizes any thought content focused on during the rumination. So these are two really important things to understand, okay? The first thing that it does is it magnifies and prolongs whatever we think about, and usually negative states, so sadness, anger, whatever. So here's practically what happens. So if I do something stupid today, generally speaking, tomorrow is a new day, and I don't have to linger with the effects of my stupidity. If you are someone who ruminates, the problem is that if you make a mistake today, it causes you hurt for the next year, for the next 2 years, maybe even a lifetime. I've worked with ruminators that had problems in high school, like they got dumped by their significant other, and they just like feel trapped by that particular injury, and this is like 20 years later. You may have seen sort of examples of this, right? People who get like sort of frozen in time and can't move past something. That is literally what rumination does. So rumination takes a single instance of damage and turns it into dot damage until you are done ruminating with it, which oftentimes is sort of never, right? Because you can keep on replaying these thoughts over and over and over again. So not only does it increase the duration of emotional injury, it also increases the intensity. Now, how does this happen? This is something that's really important to understand, and it kind of leads to black and white thinking. So this is something that's really wild. Have you all ever been like at the grocery store and tried to figure out what to buy? So you're sitting there at a grocery store, there's lots of different options, and then you're like, I don't know what to buy. And you sit there and you think about it for a little bit. And as you think about it for a little bit, you make a decision. So I want y'all to understand this is really wild, but the more that your mind thinks about something, the more polarized you become. This is just a feature of the mind, okay? If that sounds kind of crazy, just hear me out. So when I'm like, if I don't know if I should take this job or not take this job, what do? I think about it. So at the beginning, I may be like, let's say here is take job, and here is pass on job. And at the beginning of my thinking process, I'm somewhere in this middle area, right? But despite the fact that I'm in the middle area, as I think about it more and more and more, I start to drift this way, and drift this way, and drift this way, and then eventually I make up my mind. So I want y'all to think about how crazy it is to make up your mind. I want y'all to think about how impossible it is for a computer. If a computer makes a calculation and ends up with a question mark, I don't know about generative AI because they just hallucinate all kinds of crap. Right, once you have a certain amount of inputs, like if I have a mathematical equation and I don't have enough information to solve the equation and I put it into a computer, the computer is going to say at the first iteration or the 10th iteration, we don't have enough info to solve the problem. That is not how the human mind works. The more that we chew over things in our mind, the more polarized we become naturally. I wasn't sure if I was going to break up with you. I thought about it a lot, and now I know I'm going to break up with you. What new information do I have? None. So the more that we turn things over in our mind, the more abstract we become, right? So as I think about things, more and more and more, I will start to deduce abstract principles. So like, let's take the example of someone who is ruminating. Let's say here's high school, and I never had a girlfriend. Let's say the reason I never had a girlfriend is because my parents were poor, right? So like I couldn't hang out with people. Everyone wanted to have the fancy shoes, and I didn't have the fancy shoes. So I considered myself unattractive, and that's why I don't have a girlfriend. Then I go to uni. And then what happens is I struggled to adjust to uni. I ended up getting depression in my freshman year. Really, really common occurrence. And since I got depression in my freshman year, I didn't form, when everybody was making friends, I didn't make friends, so I kind of got left out of all of the forming friend circles, so now I got kind of left behind, and then that's the reason that I don't have a girlfriend. And then now I started my job, but since I didn't have a girlfriend in high school or college, I don't know how to talk to girls, and since I am behind now, I have no girl. So if we look at this situation, there are strong contextual reasons why I've been single my whole life. This problem happened over here, this problem happened over here, but then what happens with the mind as I chew on this over and over and over again, I start to come up with an abstract conclusion, which is that I am a loser. So the brain, what the mind does, is it looks at this problem, and it collects all of this data, and then it tries to draw an abstract conclusion. Now, here's the problem with an abstract conclusion. The more intelligent you are, by the way, the more likely this is to happen. This is not actionable. So what we find with rumination is actually shocking. Even though ruminators report that it increases perceived insight into problems, experimental studies demonstrate that rumination interferes with effective problem solving, both by making individuals more pessimistic and also more abstract and less able to access specific details of how to resolve a difficulty. Okay? And this includes dysphoric mothers with infants under 12 months. So this is wild. So what this means is like, this is something that is in your brain. And like, forget about all these like complicated, histories and high school this happened and college this happened. Like, we can study the effects of rumination and how much it causes problems with like mothers and infants who are like 12 months. So this effect can be observed over there. So it's really like a neurological effect. It happens in the brain. And so what happens when we ruminate a lot is we develop this abstract thing. And if I ask someone who feels like a loser, how well do you understand your problem? They will say, I understand it incredibly well. The reason that I'm an incel is because of X, Y, Z. I'm not trying to bash on incels. Because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this. I understand everything. The black pill is real. I've read so much research. It's so true of so many people's experiences. My understanding is great. My understanding level is 100. What are you going to do about it? Nothing can be done. I don't know what to do about it. I can't think of any solution because I am a loser. This is the problem with rumination. Because when we make an abstract conclusion from these highly specific actionable scenarios, we end up with a conclusion that is not actionable. So it keeps us stuck. It also makes us pessimistic, which is a big problem because not only does it enhance our negative emotional circuitry, but here in my nucleus accumbens and my frontal lobes, anytime my brain thinks about doing an action, should I go to the gym? Then what my brain does is it calculates the probability of success of that action. So should I go to the gym? And what does the black pillar do? The black pillar says there's no point in going to the gym because going to the gym doesn't make me not a loser. It doesn't correct for all my social skills. It doesn't correct for all of the things that I've missed. It doesn't correct for the fact that I have an avoidant attachment style. So any point of progress is insufficient at solving this big abstract thing. This is the effect of pessimism on your mind. So when you have negative emotional stuff that's being amplified and you have a pessimistic thinking, it decreases the value of action. And once the value of action goes down, then your motivational circuitry basically says it isn't worth it. And if y'all pay attention to people who are red pillars or black pillars or whatever on the internet, you will notice a couple of very, very simple things. The first is look at how abstractly they're thinking. Are they thinking concretely or are they thinking in big sweeping generalizations? And the second thing is look at the value of progress in their mind. Do they say, okay, like if I have this problem, does moving forward in it help at all? And they say, won't it help at all? It doesn't matter. So progress becomes useless. And when progress becomes useless, that's how you get stuck in time for years. The next thing to consider is that rumination increases self-focus and amplifies the vicious repetitive cycle between negative mood and cognition, wherein each increases the likelihood of the other. The focuses attention on the discrepancy between one's desired state and the actual situation, making this discrepancy more salient, okay? In vulnerable individuals, this pattern of mutual amplification between negative thinking and negative mood produces an emotional cascade in which rumination can lead to very intense levels of negative affect. Okay, so what does this mean? So when we ruminate, what this does is it focuses on where we are, where we want to go, and it highlights this gap. And the more, so I don't know if this kind of makes sense, like, making progress in your life involves moving from here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here. But that's not how rumination functions. It doesn't think like that. That's the whole problem. What it does is it looks at the gigantic gap between where you are and where you want to go. And it just highlights all of your shortcomings. This is the way that it becomes an emotional magnifier. And this is one of the mechanisms through which it interferes with problem solving. Because we're not thinking about the next step Our mind is literally focused on all the things that I'm doing wrong and how far I have to go. So here's the problem. Here's my actual state. Here's my desired state. And what ruminators will do is, instead of moving towards happiness or progress, what they tend to do is, this feels bad. And what they try to do is move away from feeling bad. They don't try to actually move towards their goal. They simply try to move away from this state. I'm not going to grind to improve my life. I just want to stop feeling this way. There's one last really damaging thing about rumination, which is that it makes you less sensitive to contextual changes. Okay, so let's take a quick look. So rumination has been hypothesized to make ruminators less sensitive and responsive to contextual cues and events in the world around them, including signals of potential reward, changing contingencies, or interpersonal reactions. Such abstract and internal preoccupation could prevent ruminators from adaptively responding to changes in the environment, or from benefiting from corrective learning that disconfirms negative beliefs. This, I think, is arguably the most damaging thing about rumination, is that if you make some conclusion about your life, I am a loser, and then you're at work, and then someone at work is like, hey, you want to hang out sometime? You get some kind of signal that you're not a loser. You get some kind of signal that, oh, actually there's an opportunity right now. There's actually contrary information to your belief that you're a loser. You're not stuck in this situation forever. The nature of rumination makes it so that you are unable, or it is more difficult for you to change, to detect changes in your context. So if you induce rumination, so induced rumination interferes with contextual sensitivity, reduced responsiveness to infant vocalizations in mothers with generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder, and reduced sensitivity to infants in mother-child interactions for both dysphoric and non-dysphoric mothers. So this is important. So we may think, okay, like this is because everybody's depressed, right? That's why they're not responding to changes in the context and changes in the world around them that afford them new opportunities. No, so these studies actually show that if you take a mother who has an infant, and the mother is non-dysphoric, so the mother is actually totally doing fine, and you induce rumination in the mother, she will become less sensitive and responsive to the vocalizations of her infant. This is how deep this stuff actually runs. So the most devastating thing about rumination is, even if your circumstances change and you can make progress, which happens in just about every patient that I've worked with who ruminates, the rumination interferes with your ability to see those kinds of changes. So then you feel like you're stuck forever. So now let's try to recap and understand where this picture puts us. So if I'm someone who's a ruminator, I have one negative event, and then I sort of play that over and I multiply the damage times 10. So this turns into dot damage instead of a single instance of damage. Then what happens is I may have a second negative event, and then I may have a third negative event, and then I sort of end up making an abstract conclusion. Now that I'm a loser, I have negative emotion, I can't see any concrete action, I become pessimistic, so it's not worth trying, right? And then this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if I add these three things, then what happens? Oh yeah, I am a loser. Look at all this evidence. Look at all this evidence. Look at all this evidence. But in the same way that if we induce rumination in non-dysphoric mothers and they start to have problems with their infant, something very cool happens. If we can stop rumination, a lot of these problems will start to get better on their own. Because the rumination in and of itself is what is creating the problems. And this is something I want y'all to really understand, because this is kind of a mind-blowing moment. At least it was for me. See, when you ruminate, you think about your problems. So you think the problem is out here. You think the problem is what you see in the outside world. That's not the problem. The problem is in here. The problem is the way that you are viewing things. The rumination literally impairs problem solving, literally magnifies negative emotion. So there's one additional problem that is super scary about rumination, which is when we get stuck in this cycle, ruminators tend to be more avoidant. So goal pursuit that is focused on avoiding an undesirable state rather than approaching a desired state may make it hard to make sufficient progress towards the goals, as it provides little concrete guidance regarding necessary steps and may be hard to definitively resolve. High trait ruminators are more likely to have avoidance goals than low trait ruminators. So if we disable the rumination, a lot of things will start to get better. So then the question very naturally becomes, how do we do that? So the first is that rumination is triggered by negative emotion. So this is what's really weird. In your brain, when your amygdala activates, when you start to experience negative emotion, it triggers in a habitual way the ruminative thought process. So if you start to have a bad day, then the rumination triggers. Now here's what we need to do. We need to separate ruminative from problem solving, right? So all rumination is going to do is make us think more and more abstractly, is going to polarize our thoughts, and is going to interfere with problem solving. So this sounds so weird, but like when we ruminate, we think we're trying to figure out a problem, like we're trying to find a solution. It actually is very bad at doing that. So here's what we need to do. When we ruminate, usually it's triggered by a negative emotion. This negative emotion needs to be dealt with separately. So if you're ruminating, you're not going to solve your problem. So we got to start solving our problem outside of rumination, separate these two things. Instead, what we need to do is some kind of focused emotional regulation technique. So you can do Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam. We teach a lot of stuff about, emotional regulation. Check out Dr. K's guide. It'll really help with all this kind of stuff, okay? Deal with that negative emotion. Once the negative emotion is gone, then what we want to do, or we're not feeling that negative emotion very actively right now, stop the rumination. What we want to do is then we want to engage in problem solving. So problem solving should only be done when you are happy. Only be done when you're happy. There's a second aspect of problem solving, which is remember that the reason that our problems feel unsolvable is because we're overly abstract. What can I do today to become no longer a loser? That's not something I can do. Maybe I can work out, maybe I do, whatever. There's all kinds of practical things I can do, right? But it doesn't feel like it works. So instead, what we need to do is really focus on concrete thinking and watch out for the pessimistic angle. So what we need to start doing is acting. We need to start thinking in a very, very concrete way. And this is where the solution that I want y'all to do is the solution that will be insufficient. Watch out for that pessimistic thinking. Don't quit something just because it isn't going to work. If it is moving you in the right direction, then you should just do it. It's as simple as that. So watch out for that negative kind of thinking. The third thing that we need to do is look at our context and improve context. So even if you feel like a loser today, chances are your situation is different than the way that it used to be. Chances are that for each situation that you think makes you a loser, there was some context that was contributing to that. And now you may say, oh, but I've fallen so far behind, there's no way I can recover, the context doesn't matter. That's the ruminative thinking. That's the pessimistic thinking. That is the thinking of insufficiency. So what I want y'all to do is really be on the lookout for any opportunity for change. Look at, okay, is this person inspiring me a little bit? Could this person be like one of my writing buddies? I could review their writing. They could review my writing. Is this person maybe this person asked me if I wanted to hang out sometime, and then the pessimistic thinking is oh, they're not going to want to date me or whatever, which is totally fine, but I'm going to hang out with them anyway. So be very, very sensitive to changes in context. And here's the other critical thing. So when I work with people who ruminate, one really good way to tie this all together is to try to improve your context. Don't worry about solving your problem, because nothing is going to work to solve your problem, right? What can you do to increase your context? Let's say you're alone and you don't have any girlfriends or whatever, boyfriends, whatever. What can you do to increase your improve your context? What can you do to put yourself in a situation where a girlfriend or boyfriend is more likely to arise? Can you make platonic friendships with people of the opposite gender and then ask you to hook you up with someone, maybe set you up on a blind date? If you're struggling in the professional side, can you start to do a little bit more networking, talk to your boss a little bit, focus on the context? Even if you were a loser, look at the environment around you and how can you improve your environment just a little bit. If y'all do these things, then there's a good chance that your rumination will improve because we're targeting the rumination directly. The last thing that I'm going to leave y'all with is a meditation. So this is where, when we get stuck in the cycle of rumination, there's one meditation that I found it really helps my patients a fair amount, which is the meditation of what's the next thought. So anytime you have a thought, anytime you start to ruminate, one thought leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, but you're trapped inside those thoughts. Oh my God, then this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to... Take a step back, because this is what I ended up doing with my patients that ended up getting the supervisor uncomfortable with me, is I started teaching them things like this. I started teaching them what's the next thought. Go meta for a moment and observe the process of rumination. Just ask yourself, okay, brain, what thought is next? Okay, brain, what thought is next? Okay, brain, what thought is next? We don't dwell on the thought. We don't wallow in the negativity. Okay, now you're upset about this? Okay, fine. What are you upset upset about next? What's the next thought? What's the next thought? What's the next thought? So this is very important to understand because when we ruminate, we are inside each thought. And oftentimes we don't have the strength of will to control or disrupt those thoughts. We can't stop the chain. So we're going to do something else. We're going to float above it and we're just going to ask the brain, what's the next thought? Okay, what's next? Okay, what's next? We're not going to get caught up in it. What's next? What's next? And something really cool will happen. The chain will run through, but you won't get emotionally amplified by it. If you are getting emotionally amplified, that means you're getting lost in the, oh, then this is going to happen and this is going to happen. No, let it run. Just let it run. Okay, Burrow, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And if you use this exercise, you may find that it calms you down a little bit, and then you can engage in the contextual problem solving.
Death frenzy! More slaves, more power!
Today, we're going to talk about how to make life easy. Now, if you're listening to this, your first reaction to that is probably, this is ridiculous, right? This guy is telling me that there's a way to make life easy. And how do we naturally respond to that? We say that this person does not understand my life. This person may think life is easy, but that's because their life is easy. Some people out there have easy lives if they have money, if they have power, if they have security. And then there are people out there who have hard lives. And it's no use for people who have easy lives to tell people who have hard lives it's possible to make your life easy. So when we have this kind of reaction to this statement, hey, it's possible to make your life easy, what do you think that actually does? The first thing that it does is if someone has actually figured out how to make life easy, we end up muzzling them. We end up canceling them because you're not allowed to say that. And if we live in a society where people who have figured out how to make life easy can't talk about it, what does that mean for the rest of us? That means that the rest of us will continue to live hard lives because the people who have figured out we're canceling in the first place. And the most bizarre thing is that one of the reasons that life has become harder and harder and harder is because we've started to rely on science more and more and more. And the more we rely on science, the harder life becomes. Now, this may sound really confusing because doesn't science make a lot of our lives better? It's very easy. I can get food delivered to my door. I can get grocery delivery. I can work online. Science makes my life easy in so many different ways. Well, yes and no. Because if we look at science, sure, there's a lot of technological advances which will make my life more convenient, but something paradoxical is happening. Even though my life is becoming more and more convenient because everything is at my fingertips, right? Especially this guy that can do everything. Somehow we're seeing an unprecedented mental health crisis despite the fact that we have a ton of technological advancement. So what's going on? So it turns out that science is really good at advancing technologies and building convenience, but science is actually quite bad at teaching you how to live your life. But you may say, but hold on, Dr. K, we have all of these studies about happiness and this and that, and let's tunnel down into that. As it turns out, those studies don't make things easier, they actually make things harder. So we can have as many studies as you want about what makes people happy, and people will say, okay, you need $100,000 a year, now probably $125,000. You need a healthy, stable relationship. You need social support. You need access to green space. This is the way that you get a happy life, right? This is science's answers. Just do all of these things and you will be happy. The problem is that science tells you what the goals are or what correlates with happiness, but it doesn't actually tell you how to get there, right? So they don't teach us the how, they just teach us in general what correlates with people being happy. Now let's understand what I mean by that. So science is very good at teaching you population-based stuff. Science can't tell you what will work for you. Science is the study of what works for the average person. So we can look at scientific studies on happiness, for example. And science can look at 100 people who are happy and 100 people who are unhappy, and science will tell you, okay, the way to be happy is to make $125,000 a year, to have a strong friend group, to have someone who loves you in your life, access to green space, a pet, and to meditate every day. So science is like, this is the way to happiness. And then if you try to apply that knowledge to your life, it becomes very, very difficult. Because you can't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to go find someone who loves me. Hey, I'm going to create a friend group. Because this is how science works. Science is a population-based approach. So science doesn't give us answers for you as an individual. It gives us answers for what works on average for most people. So a good example of this is something like SSRI or antidepressant medication. So we can do randomized controlled trials that show us that 100 people who are depressed can start on an SSRI, and on average, we will see a 30% improvement. But this doesn't mean that if I give you an SSRI, that you will get 30% better. It means that if we take 100 people, a third of them will get 80% better, a third of them will get maybe 40% better, and a third of them will have no benefit at all. But when it comes to applying the science to your life, which of those things do you fall into? Science has no way of knowing. And this is why, despite all of our advances in science, we still require clinicians to administer medicine. So let's understand precisely what a clinician does. What a clinician does is takes all of this information that science has provided, these evidence-based techniques like, let's say, motivational interviewing for addictions or dialectical behavioral therapy for borderline personality disorder. It takes all of these like scientific things, and then we actually apply it to an individual. You require a human being to take all of science and translate it into something that will work for you. And this is why when we look at the outcomes for problems that are hard, right, like problems like addictions, we require clinical support. And this is what we discover, is that science is good at providing population-based answers, but the application to a human being still requires a lot of specificity. So science can't give us all the answers for our individual life. So in order to understand how to make life easy, we have to understand what is the difference between easy and hard. And this is very simple. So if you know how to do something, it's easy. And if you don't know how to do something, it's hard, right? This is very, very simple. If you know how to change a tire, it's relatively easy. If you don't know how to change a tire, it feels very hard and feels very impossible. And this is true of things that we view as objectively hard as well. So I'm an addiction psychiatrist, which means that I work with people who have addictions. And if we look at the definition of addiction, it's something that's very, very hard to deal with. We have aspects of your physiology, your biology. We have, for example, in opioid addiction, we have these mu receptors, these little receptors all over your body that if you ever stop taking an opiate, they will start exhibiting pain signals. They'll amplify all of the pain in your body. They'll give you withdrawals. You'll start having diarrhea. You'll feel awful. You'll start shaking. Everything will be very, very difficult. Your body will punish you. Your brain will punish you if you ever stop opiates. And so this is something that is objectively hard to deal with. And yet, through the practice of clinical medicine, we will do something really cool, which is that the majority of my patients feel like managing their addiction is now easy, right? They don't even think about it anymore. It used to be hard, but then they learned the knack of it. Then they figured it out, and then suddenly it becomes easy. So let's take the example of something that is objectively hard, like an addiction. So if I have something like an opioid addiction or marijuana addiction, this is something that is objectively difficult to overcome. Because I have all these receptors in my brain and my body, these mu receptors in opioid addiction, that if I ever stop taking opiates, they will punish me. They will create pain. They will create diarrhea. I'll start aching all over. I'll feel chills. I'll feel so physically bad. My body will punish me if I ever stop taking the opiate. And so if someone struggles with opioid addiction, they will say this is really hard to overcome. It is impossible to overcome. But as they practice and as we use certain techniques like motivational interviewing, as they engage in things like Narcotics Anonymous and peer support, as they do all this stuff, they get the knack of it, right? And suddenly what became impossible becomes very difficult but doable. And then it becomes hard, but actually not that big of a deal. And then eventually you get to this point where a lot of people who are sober will say, oh, I don't even think about it anymore, right? Even now when I go to a barbecue, I don't even think about having a beer. I don't want the beer. Suddenly that which was so difficult to control becomes a natural impulse. I don't even want to drink. Like, it's disgusting. I'm done with that stuff. And the question is, what the hell? How did this happen? Because this is objectively difficult, right? Science will tell you, oh my God, overcoming addiction is objectively difficult. So what's going on here? Yes, it's very simple. If we want to understand the difference between hard and easy, it's one very simple thing. If you know how to do something, it's easy. And if you don't know how to do something, it's hard, right? So until we learn how to manage our addiction, it becomes hard or even impossible. And once we learn how to manage our addiction, it becomes easy. And this is not just true of addiction, right? So you can say, oh my God, I just built my first PC and it was so hard. It's so hard to build a PC. I have no idea how to do it. And then you have people over here at PC Master Race who are like, don't worry about it, bro. It's easy. Like, I'll help you out, right? So as soon as you learn how to do something, it becomes easy. And if you don't know how to do something, it becomes hard. Very simple. Hey, y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we share to actually create change in your life, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health. It combines over 2 decades of my experience of both being a monk and a psychiatrist, and distills all of the most important things I've learned into a choose-your-own-adventure format. So check out the link in the bio and start your journey today. We spend a lot of time learning to do hard things. So let's take the example of calculus, okay? So if we're studying calculus, we study calculus for 1 year, about 2 semesters. The semester is about 12 weeks. And then over the course of, let's say, 1 week of calculus, let's look at what our actual studying program is. If you want to learn calculus, you go to class for 3 hours a week. And for every hour that you're in class, you should study for 2 hours a week. So we're spending 9 hours a week studying calculus. We're studying calculus over 2 semesters that are 12 weeks each, right? And so this ends up 12 weeks times 9 is 108. So I'm spending 108 hours for 1 semester of calculus. And over the course of the year, I spend 216 hours of dedicated study to learn calculus. Now, when it comes to living your life, how many hours of dedicated study do you have? Do you go to class where you learn certain concepts about how to live your life and then spend 2 hours applying those concepts for every hour that you learn? Do you spend 9 hours a week practicing how to live life with intention, where someone is teaching you what the principles are and then you practice? Absolutely not. The reason that life is hard is because we don't spend time learning how to live life, right? You just kind of get bodied by life. You're sort of struggling over here, and then this thing happens and you try to manage. You're managing, coping, instead of ever intentionally learning. And as long as you are not doing that, if you don't know how to live life, of course life is going to be hard. And so until you've spent 216 hours of dedicated study trying to live life, of course it's going to be hard. So today, we are going to teach you the most fundamental building block of how to make your life easy. This is a concept that was discovered by the yogis thousands of years ago. And it turns out that if you understand this concept, a lot of your life will become easy. And there's another problem here, which is that a lot of the things that we try to do to make our life easy are actually making our life harder. And the two culprits are motivation and willpower. Everyone is out there looking for motivation, and everyone is out there looking for willpower. And they think the more I'm motivated, the more my willpower is strong, the easier my life will be. Actually, the exact opposite. Motivation and willpower are the wrong direction. You shouldn't even be moving in that direction if you understand this one yogic concept. That concept is the concept of something called a guna. So guna means quality, basically. And what the yogis essentially discovered is that there are 3 states, 3 qualities that all things can be in. There's a fundamental quality of tamas, which is inertia. There's a fundamental quality of rajas, which is activity or passion. And there's a fundamental quality of sattvas, which is balance. So if you look at anything in the universe, we're going to talk about people for a second, you'll notice that there are 2 forces. There is an inertia force, and there is an activating force. And when these 2 forces are in balance, things will be easy. And when they are out of balance, things will become hard. So let's understand this in the body and mind. So there have been days in your life where things are easy, right? You had some days where things are easy. And if you really look at those days in your life, you may say, okay, I'm like kind of motivated, but it's not actually technically that you're very motivated. You don't wake up and I've got a fire in my bed. Let's go, son. You're like, okay, like I got to do this stuff today, so let me just go ahead and do it. Okay, let me just take care of this stuff. Let me take care of this. There's a certain casualness to it. There's a certain ease to it, right? And on these days, you're also not pushing yourself. Because you're not like, oh my God, I need a ton of willpower. I got to do it. Oh my God, it's so hard. You kind of wake up and on some days, you know what I'm talking about, right? You've had some of these days where like the stars align and you don't know what is going on. And like suddenly like things are a little bit easier that day. You wake up one day, you brush your teeth, you have some breakfast, you sit down, you do a couple hours of work and suddenly like, oh my God, you did so much. You were procrastinating so hard and in 3 or 4 hours, you kind of got everything done. What the hell is going on? Like, how did that happen? And then you wake up on other days where you're like, oh my God, it's so hard to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. Man, I need a cup of coffee. Man, I need 2 cups of coffee. Oh my God. And doing everything is so difficult. You have to push your body. This is tamas. Because your body and your mind are inert. Pushing your mind to focus on something, it's inert. It doesn't want to move. Pushing your body, it's inert. Right? And when we get an abundance of tamas, we even get a clinical diagnosis of something like major depressive disorder and a depressive episode. There's a part of that is psychomotor retardation, which means that walking down the street is like moving through mud instead of moving through air. There's a lot of resistance in inertia. This is tamas. On the flip side, we have rajas. Rajas is activity or passion. And you may say, okay, but like inertia is bad, so rajas is better, right? No, equally bad, just bad in a different way. So when we have an overabundance of rajas, we get a ton of passion. Right? So we get super excited about stuff. And this is your problem too. It's not just that you're inert some days, it's that you're way too passionate other days. Oh my God, I got so excited about this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to order all this stuff. I'm going to buy a guitar. I'm going to buy all this stuff. I'm going to learn to play guitar. You have this overabundance of activity or passion. You get super excited about a video game. Your mind gets super excited about something. Oh my God, we're cooking now. Let's go, baby. Let's go. And what ends up happening after an overabundance of rajas? You run out of steam. Or the other problem is that you should be focusing on thing number A, but your mind is so active or passionate about thing number B that you don't focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on. So in both cases, this is not the right state of mind. Instead, what we want is a balance, for things to be balanced, right? I'm not overly excited, but I have enough energy or activity to where I can do the thing that I need to do, and my mind is relatively tranquil and calm. Now let's go back to motivation and willpower. The problem with motivation and willpower is that they are compensations for tamas and rajas. So if we really think about motivation, why do we want motivation? So we want motivation because if my body or mind is motivated, then I don't have to force it, right? So motivation is a natural inclination to do something. And we all go seeking out motivation because if we're motivated, oh, thank God, then I don't need willpower. My body will naturally want to do it. But I want you to think a little bit about how insidious and devastating this truly is. Because what you're trying to do is create a state for your body or mind where it does what you want it to do. It wants to do it, right? The mind, once it's motivated, it naturally wants to do something. But that still means you're not in control. If the mind is motivated towards doing something, you're breathing a sigh of relief, but it's not that you are telling it to do it and then the mind naturally follows your orders. It's thank God the mind actually wants to do it because I have no fucking control over my mind to begin with. So on the days that it wants to do what I want it to do, thank God. And so we end up chasing this idea where we want the mind to do what we want it to do, but we are fundamentally not control of it. And this is what makes life hard because motivation waxes and wanes. So what motivation is to try to channel this sense of rajas. We want a natural passion in the direction that we want it because we don't control the mind. So we hope that the passion is in the direction that we want. Well, what about willpower? Willpower is our antidote to tamas, right? So when our body or mind is inert and we don't feel like doing something, what is our solution? Our solution is willpower. So even though it's sluggish and slow, I'm going to force it. I'm going to push it. Push, more push. Willpower. Like, let's go, let's go, let's go. But if you live a life where things are, there's a large exertion of willpower, your life will not be easy. You may accomplish particular things, but it'll be fucking exhausting. Because we know that there are 3 major things that drain our mental willpower. And drain our cognition, actually, is really a better way to put it. Drain our cognitive energy. And willpower is one of them. Forcing your mind to do something or your body to do something is very, very difficult and very draining. And here we are chasing motivation, which is actually tricky because motivation means you're not in control. You cross your fingers and you hope that your body and mind want to do something because they're the boss and you're just along for the ride. And on the flip side, we're draining ourselves trying to push this inert body. And then on the flip side, there are these days where you're in sattvas. And in sattvas, your mind is relatively balanced. You're not overly excited. So you've got some stamina, you've got some staying power, and you can say to your mind, okay, today we're going to do this. So, and then your mind is like, okay, like, let's just get it done. And on these days, life is easy. So now the question is, all right, so if I'm in a Rajasic or Tamasic state of mind, how do I cultivate sattvas? There's one really simple trick that you can do, and we'll teach you all some more detail. The first is on a day that you are passionate, you need to do things that will make you more sattvic tomorrow. So anytime you have an overabundance of rajas, the goal is not to give in to the rajas, but to do things that will make you have a balanced mind tomorrow. So good examples of this are, first of all, food. So there are certain foods that will lead to passion and certain foods that will lead to inertia. We all know there are foods that will lead to food comas, right? So these are things that are highly calorically dense, a combination of carbohydrates and fats together. So all desserts fall in this category, pizza falls into this category, processed foods that will cause things like inflammation and stuff like that in the gut. Well, there's all kinds of science. We're not going to get into that now. You can check out all of our other videos. But we know that when you eat processed foods, it increases inflammation. Inflammation then causes a low level of brain fog in your brain, will make it hard for you to focus on things, will make it hard for you to have willpower. Everything gets screwed. So how do we create this balanced mind? So let's just think about it for a second, right? How do we create balance in our body? How do we create balance in our mind? What we put into the body and mind will determine its function. So if we eat particular kinds of food, the body will be slow. If we eat other kinds of food, the body will be activated, right? If I get drunk on liquor, suddenly I'm filled with passion. And the same is true of the mind. Certain foods will slow down the mind. Certain foods will speed up the mind. This is true of all psychoactive substances as well. These are the things that affect the mind in a particular way. So food that is light and nutritious doesn't weigh down the mind, but also doesn't overly activate it. And the second thing that we can do to create a balanced body or mind is to stretch it, right? So we want to engage in exercises that will sort of clean out the mind, purify the mind, as well as stretch the mind, focus the mind. So this is where mind-body practices are very, very powerful. So if we look at practices like yoga or Tai Chi, how do these things work fundamentally? So when I engage in a yoga posture, it's not about becoming a human pretzel. It's that if I try to balance on one leg with my arms above like this, what's it going to do to my mind? It is going to force my mind to focus, right? Because I can't stand like this on one leg unless my mind is focused. This is the point of yoga, is to literally practice the focusing of the mind. And since you are telling the mind to do something, and it is maintaining that state, despite the fact that it is hard, you are training the mind to listen. And the more you engage in this kind of stuff, the more balanced the mind will be, the more pliant the mind will be. It'll become supple, easy to kind of listen to you. So these are the two things that we really want to focus on. So the first thing is we're going to eat light, nutritious food. So high amounts of fiber, but not processed fiber or anything like that. Don't have any of that Metamucil crap or anything like that. Eat vegetables, eat fruits, cook yourself a nice nutritious meal. Second thing that we want to do on a day of Rajas when we feel pretty good is we want to do some kind of yoga or Tai Chi. Ideally, not even exercise, but we want a mind-body balancing practice. So you can do Surya Namaskar or something like that. The third thing that we really want to be careful about when we are trying to create a sattvic mind is to avoid all psychoactive substances. Now, this is a big one that a lot of people will struggle with. So let's understand psychoactive substances for a second and how they affect our minds. Let's take caffeine. So what does caffeine do? Caffeine counters tamas, right? So if I wake up in the morning and I feel very sluggish, or if I'm having an afternoon, oh my God, I'm kind of sluggish, let me take caffeine. It artificially boosts my energy. But caffeine doesn't increase your energy. All you're doing is taking an advance on your future energy. So if I drink caffeine now, I'm going to have a crash later. This is true of all stimulants, right? So once the stuff wears out, all of this artificial stuff that you've been kind of suppressing through the caffeine. So if we look at technically the way that caffeine works, it blunts our ability to detect our fatigue. So the way that our brain knows how fatigued we are is we detect this chemical called adenosine. And the more adenosine we have in our brain, the more we feel tired. And so that what ends up happening when we take caffeine doesn't actually give us energy. and just blunts our ability to detect our tiredness. So once the caffeine wears off, there's this pile of adenosine, and suddenly you feel very tired. Okay, so caffeine doesn't give you energy. You're just taking in advance from the future, and then you're going to have to pay it back. Other psychoactive substances like alcohol or marijuana or things like that, these two are problematic because what these are going to do is going to calm us down. Oh my God, I have anxiety. This is an overabundance of activity of the mind. And so then what happens, I take the substance and it induces a thamsic state. We are making our mind inert, which by the way is true of our psychiatric medications as well. If you look at these medications like antipsychotic medications, they're all sedating because they literally slow down the activity of the mind. Even SSRIs are somewhat sedating, right? We can feel sleepy, sluggish. We are inducing a thamsic state because in psychiatry, when there's an overactivity of the mind, we just sedate it. Literally, that's what we do. That's the neurochemistry of our psychiatric drugs. So this is the problem, is as long as you are ping-ponging back and forth between a Rajasic mind that is chemically not even balanced, but overcome with something that's thamsic, right? We're sedating a passionate mind. Or on the flip side, we have a sluggish mind that we're artificially boosting with stimulants. In both of these cases, the state of our mind is unhealthy. It's not balanced. It's not easy. So you must cut out as many psychoactive substances as you can. And you will hear this, you may even experience this yourself, that if you take a break from all alcohol, all marijuana, caffeine, doesn't have to be all of these substances at the same time. Every patient I've ever talked to, if they can cut out a psychoactive substance, after 30 to 60 days, they feel better. It may come back after a while. You may need to use it. I'm definitely in that camp for caffeine. But this is the kind of thing where once you actually detox off of the substance, everyone says they feel better. So what we want to do is create a sattvic mind. And the more sattvic our mind is, the more balanced our mind is, the better we will be. So we want to eat light, nutritious foods that are nutrient rich and ideally not too calorically dense. It's not so much about whether you eat 2,000 calories or 1,800 or 2,100. That's not that important. The main thing is that the food should not be psychoactively dulling, right? So we want food that's light and nutritious, some kind of mind-body practice, and some kind of restriction on as many substances as you can manage to restrict. If you can do these 3 days on a day that you are Rajasic, right? Because remember, there are going to be some days that you're overly active, some days that you're, inactive, and some days where you're balanced. So you take an overly active day, which is going to happen at some point. And then you do as many sattvic things as you can. As you do more sattvic things, what are you actually doing? You're actually setting up for a healthier tomorrow. So when you wake up the next day, all of that stuff in your gut, the mind-body practice that you've done, the reduction in substances means you're going through less withdrawal, okay? Or maybe you started the process of withdrawal, but since you're eating healthy and stuff like that, you're not very sluggish, your gut bacteria isn't out of whack. The next day when you wake up, your mind will be 1%, 5%, 10% more sattvic. And as your mind becomes more sattvic, it'll be a little bit easier to get it to do what you want to do because it's balanced. It's not overly sluggish and it's not overly excited. So now you've added 10% balance, and so then if you tell it, okay, today we're going to eat healthy again. Today we're going to do a little bit more yoga. Let's try yoga today. Let's skip that second cup of caffeine in the afternoon. And by the way, a great way to avoid afternoon caffeine is just to nap. Okay, so if you guys are struggling with caffeine, fine, have your cup in the morning, but in the afternoon, just nap. Right? Because you're tired. So listen to your body. Instead of ignoring your body, just listen to it and take a little bit more rest. Then when you wake up, you'll feel probably not even refreshed. You'll feel a little bit more sluggish mentally, but your body will get that rest, which will help you tomorrow. So this is the key thing to understand about how to make your life easy. The first thing is that you must balance your body. As your body and mind are balanced, life will suddenly become a lot easier. Second thing to understand is that this balancing takes time. And the main thing to do is you should invest in whatever you can today that will make your mind more sattvic tomorrow. The third thing to understand is that if your mind is more sattvic, it is easier to do more sattvic things. So it's kind of like a string of dominoes, where if I can eat healthy and meditate one day, do mind-body practices, whatever, tomorrow in some way it'll be easier to do it again. We're not saying that you have to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about a trend in the right direction. And the last thing to understand about making your life easy is that in order to make your life easy, you must be willing to live a hard life today. There are two kinds of people in life. The people who want an easy life, so they seek an easy life, and they avoid hardness. And their life becomes hard, right? So when you're sitting here and you're avoiding the work that you have to do, when you're not exercising, you're not doing yoga because you want an easy life, you want an easy life. In search of an easy life, you create an easy life today. A life of indulgence, a life of lack of effort, a life where you screw yourself over tomorrow. Then your life will be hard. Paradoxically, the ones who embrace a difficult life today will have an easier life tomorrow. And the more that you embrace difficulty, the easier your life will become. Until you reach a point where you are relatively sattvic. And as you are relatively sattvic, something magical will happen. Your body and mind will start to listen to you. And if your body and mind listen to you, you don't need motivation. You don't need willpower because it is compliant. It is a well-trained animal. When you tell the horse to go this way, it goes this way. And then your life will truly become.
Slay enemy foes! They obey!
Wow, that was neat. Really gotta. Well, I'll keep listening.
In the era of intelligent computing, we depend on computing power, just like we do water and electricity. AI models are making smart technology accessible for everyone. But what if
I'm Dr. Justin Sung. I'm a former medical doctor and I've been a learning coach for the past 13 years. I run a learning program called I Can Study, which has helped tens of thousands of people from around the world learn to learn more efficiently and achieve their dream results. And today we're discussing how to remember everything you read and learn. So in this video, I'll tell you what the scientific research says is the best way to learn, but I'll also cover it from a more practical perspective and tell you what that research means for you. My goal is that by the end of this video, I want you to be able to understand the research on learning, not like a researcher, but in a way that allows you to understand how you learn, and more importantly, how you can improve to be a more confident and effective learner. So today's discussion should be extremely helpful if you're in school, at any stage of school, or even if you're not in any formal education, whether it's applying knowledge and learning for work or passion projects or something on the side, any area of your life where you need to learn and apply new knowledge. Now, before I dive into the research, there are a couple of things that will probably surprise you about today's discussion. First of all, you'll realize pretty soon that most of what you know and think about learning is probably wrong, or at least incomplete, regardless of your level of achievement, even if you're a top learner. And what that means is that your idea of how to become a better learner and what that involves is probably not accurate. And trust me, I was in the same boat. I was generally a pretty decent, okay learner. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. When I entered into university, I realized that the world is a big place and there are a lot of people that are much smarter than me. I had to work really, really hard. I studied a lot and I ended up getting really, really good grades. And so when I entered into medical school and I was going through medical school, trying to cover that enormous workload while working full-time at the same time learning about learning science, I thought I would have a pretty good head start on most people. I had good grades, I'd thought about my learning, I'd certainly experimented more with my learning than most people, but as soon as I really dove into it, boy was I wrong. But it's the realizing you were wrong and realizing what is actually the truth that creates those breakthrough moments that means that you can create those big changes in your learning efficiency and in your overall ability to learn. And I've been now doing this for over 13 years, and still every year there's new research that comes out, there's new observations that I'll make in my own practice that teach me more about what it means to really become a great learner. And one thing I really want to emphasize is that if you're new to this journey on learning to learn, or whether you've been following my channel and my work for a long time, or maybe you're already even on my program, you're probably going to learn some new things in this video. And don't beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't know this stuff. Even if you're a great learner, don't think that it's an insult to your capability or your ability to learn. It's not your fault. Most of the stuff is not taught in any mainstream education. Now, part of that is because there is a lot of research that's very insightful that's only come out recently and hasn't trickled down into the mainstream. But even when it is taught, I have seen many times that it is taught incorrectly. Usually, even if they are saying it is evidence-based, they haven't spent an extensive amount of time really looking through the research to understand it. And I find that a lot of the common advice and recommendations and talk of learning research is just a rehash of the same things that everyone is saying. I've even seen formal recommendations and advice given by universities on how to study and how to learn that is outdated or inaccurate. And in fact, there's even some research on this that shows that up to 98% of teacher training curriculums globally have scientifically outdated or inaccurate information. And the stuff that does get talked about tends to focus on a very, very narrow scope of the research. And what that means, the danger of that, and why that matters to you, is that it means that the way that we're used to thinking about learning and how to learn effectively and the advice that is so accessible to us makes us focus in a very narrow direction. And in my experience, when you only focus in a narrow direction and you're ignoring all these other factors that actually influence your success, it's a lot of misguided time and effort, and it creates a lot of frustration and demotivation. In fact, I would actually say that when you focus too narrowly and you're not thinking about all these other factors that are very rarely talked about, I would say that statistically, for most people, it becomes almost impossible to actually become a better learner. So prepare to learn a few new interesting things in this video. that will change your perspective on how to become a better learner. And that's a good thing. Now, the second thing you'll realize is that a lot of the research isn't really geared to actually help you be a better learner. And that's because the purpose of research isn't always to help the learner. In fact, a lot of it is just exploring how learning works. Some of it is just research for research's sake. A lot of it is focused on teachers, like how teachers can teach in a way that makes learning more effective. And so if you look at the entire body of like learning science, a very small fraction of it is actually about what learners can do to make their learning more effective. I would say it's probably what I'd call a new or emerging field. And so I think for this video, one of the most valuable things that I can actually do for you is to package that research in a way that's personally meaningful and relevant for you. And I think I'm able to have a very unique position in doing this because you have these researchers that are amazing at research, and you have got these educators that are amazing at educating, and you've got learners that can, have great achievement. But there's virtually no one that actually sits in between them to look at the research and to guide educators and to guide learners in translating all of that. And that's what I've been solely focused on for years now. And so what I'm really excited to share with you is some of these very interesting, nuanced observations where if you apply this in one way, it can just be a complete game changer. But if you apply it the wrong way, then it could become completely useless and a waste of time. So that's what I'm going to try to do in this video. And without any further ado, here is my ultimate guide on remembering everything you read and learn.
Hold on, but I'll get some water.
Now, the first major question that we can start off with is just by asking, what is the best way to learn something? And it's really important to recognize that if that's the primary question we're trying to answer, and that's what we're looking at the research for, you're not really going to be able to improve. That's surprisingly a terrible question to ask if you actually want to become better. And the reason is because learning is a massive, very complicated process. And so asking what's the best way to learn is kind of like saying, what's the best tool for building a house? It completely misunderstands how to use methods for different purposes and what it really means to become a proficient learner. And so the real question we need to ask ourselves is, how does learning and memory even work in the first place. If we can understand what learning actually is at a cognitive or neurological level, and we understand what are the conditions that if we meet, that creates the perfect recipe for high quality memory and high quality knowledge, then we can actually reverse engineer that. We can work backwards and create techniques that we know are going to trigger those things. And so for over the last 100 years at least, there's been a lot of research that has come out around how learning actually works and how memory works. And it's a lot to go over all of those things. So what I'll do is, instead of just talking about a single study or a single piece of research, I'm going to synthesize it for you and tell you what are some of the most key findings that have come up consistently that we generally, at this current point in time, understand based on all of that research. This is some of the core principles of how learning works. And I want to frame it to you in terms of the impact that it has. So let's say that if this trophy here represents the goal that we're trying to achieve, right? Let's say that this is a first in our class for some kind of exam, getting some kind of job promotion, whatever it is. This is why we're learning. This is the prize that we've got our eyes on. In order to do that, we have to learn new information. And we don't have to just learn new information, we have to learn new information and have a high level of retention. Retention meaning how long we're able to hold things in our memory. We're talking about long-term memory. But also not just retention, but our ability to use that information in a deep, meaningful way. There's no point having a really high retention on 300 different facts. What's necessary is to actually be able to use that information in a way that's contextually appropriate. So you're not just a fact regurgitation machine vomiting out fact after fact. You're able to do what's called evaluation. You can judge the importance of information and you can use that to solve problems. So this is, in one word, something that is often called mastery. Or levels of knowledge. And this terminology comes from research like what Bloom's revised taxonomy or solo taxonomies, which are strands of research that have tried to categorize different levels of knowledge quality. And while there's a little bit of debate in terms of exactly what the different levels are, the most important thing is to recognize that there are different levels of knowledge, and towards the bottom of this level of knowledge, which is in a way the most useless kind of knowledge, is very isolated memorization. And then above isolated memorization, which is just regurgitation, you then have isolated understanding. Now, here's a question to you. How many of you have heard the statement, memorization is not real learning. Understanding is real learning. But that is not actually true, because understanding can still be isolated. So the key here is in this term isolated. This is where the problem with this lower level of knowledge or the lower level of mastery lies, is that anytime information is isolated, it exists in this silo. And there are very few times where we need to use that knowledge in a silo. So if you imagine trying to solve a complicated problem, the reason it's complicated is because it involves multiple concepts that come together in a certain way, and then you have to apply them in a certain sequence. You have to get the order correct, you have to get the relationship and interaction between the concepts correct, you have to understand that accurately. And so none of that is isolated. Even something as simple as knowing the right question, like high quality questions to ask. This requires you to not be thinking in isolation. To understand the right question to ask, you have to understand where the gaps are in your knowledge. And those gaps are usually going to be in terms of how one thing relates to, influences, or compares to another thing. And so anytime we're doing any kind of learning that is very isolated, very compartmentalized, very siloed, where we're just focused on memorizing this thing or understanding this thing, being able to explain just this thing.
Oh, he took the hit! Oh, not even!
EVO has always been kind of the flagship event for fighting games.
Every year, it's always the same. I just really want to play people and send them home. Show them that, like, your training wasn't enough.
I am an Evo competitor. One day I'm gonna make it out of the pools and just not go 0-2. Who knows, it might be this Friday.
I'm hoping to pull off a couple of silly things. I hope someone doesn't destroy me.
My goal is always just to do better than I have previously and to play matches that I have no regrets about.
Best case scenario is I win the whole thing and everyone claps for me. Fighting games were like really huge in SoCal. I mean, they were huge at the time everywhere, you know, early 90s, but SoCal especially. And there was just like this limitless pool of challengers to play. And we started going around Southern California and we were playing people at different arcades. I heard about this arcade called Southern Hills Golf Line in Westminster. Southern Hills Golf Line is really when I started getting into the competitive scene. I've been going to Evo since before it was called Evo. It used to be called the B Series back then. I went into that tournament with a big old head, you know, people aren't gonna see me, and I didn't even qualify out of my pools. I came back next year when it was actually Evo. I ended up getting to the finals in that tournament for Marvel 2. I got 5th place. Been going to Evo for over 20 years before it was even Evo. I got top 3 and top 4 before.
I was kind of one of the early writers for fighting game content around then. Clockwork and Combo Fiend were always the guys that we saw show up in bracket results. They're some of SoCal's finest.
I'll still show up to a tournament, see how I fare, and that'll give me really good insight. So Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like that's my game. And it's been 15 years now since they've had Marvel 2 as like a main stage game. So, you know, I had to come and represent.
I got my sword and shield with me. We got pools in about 2 hours. Want to hang out with some friends, gonna show you around, and let's do it.
What's good, dude? What's good? Coming in here and talking to people and catching up with old friends, it's great. You know, I've seen so many people that I haven't seen in like maybe over 10 years, just to kind of see how they've been, how they're doing, how have their skills deteriorated or improved since the last time I saw them.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, man. Yeah, it's cool to see, you know, like all the old people coming back to come play. It was more than 20 years, or 25 years ago. It gives me the heebie-jeebies to say out loud.
This is the arcade. You got pretty much every game you can think of. This is where it all started. Stepping up to a machine, testing your metal.
When I started work at Riot, I was like, Evo is a place that I need to be. Evo, to me, represents a culmination of all those hours in the arcade.
The competitors. So this is where it gets sweaty. Dreams are made, dreams are broken.
Evo, just like any other competition, it's kind of the any given Sunday deal. Whoever shows up and was the best on that day is the one who gets the championship. I guess I would call it a prayer at this point. It's very simple. All we say is love your life, be good to one another, and play in Guilty Gear.
Tournament set is really short. It's only it's best the first to 2 wins. So there's not a lot of time to figure out what your opponent's all about.
Bring it in.
I was in the sandwich. Yeah. I was in the sandwich.
I'm gonna go now, guys. Bye-bye, okay? Bye-bye. Bye-bye.